So welcome to the weekly Lisk Community Meetup. Every week we come here to share ideas, proof of concepts, or maybe talk about LIPS, for example. Also share the news for Lisk. And so if you would like to talk about a technical subject or a proof of concept you have made, or if you want to exchange ideas, just let us know and then we can invite you. Also, last time we brainstormed about ideas for this meetup, what we could do, and we are taking into account these ideas. And also this week we will have a more technical meetup, and in the future we will sometimes just discuss LIPS, for example. Lisk has been busy, so at first I would like to congratulate Daf one for being the Lisk Community Member of the Month. And it's too much to mention or to say, but Lisk has published Lisk 3, Lisk Services, completely new product joining the ecosystem. They published a new LIP in which they created more modularity within their SDK. And I think they all published that in their Lisk Achievements blog post. So make sure to read that. Also, they are going live at We Are Developers, or they are partnering with We Are Developers, and Nazar Hussein will be a speaker for the blockchain track, and he will showcase an in-depth explanation of the new Lisk SDK architecture. So make sure to tune in, because I think it's free and you can tune in live online. And then two other things. BTC Echo magazine published a story about Lisk, about how they started and what they achieved in the meantime and how they got here. It's a good story to read, so make sure to read it. And last week, Exponential Finance has published a podcast with an interview with Max Kordek. I really liked that interview, so I think everybody should listen to it. It gives a good overview about the journey of Lisk, but also about what they are trying to achieve and how they are doing it. So today we are talking with John Dubois, and he will tell you about his decentralized exchange, and I will try to ask him a couple of personal questions too. So welcome, John. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So can you quickly introduce yourself? Who are you? You've been here 5 months ago, but then I didn't ask that question, I think. Who are you? Where are you from?
So yeah, I'm John. So I'm from, I've kind of been everywhere, kind of. I was born in a small island in the Caribbean, and yeah, I sort of, my parents moved to Australia when I was quite young, and then later I moved to Europe. I was in UK for a while, then Berlin, just traveling around, looking for opportunities. So, and that's how I came to Berlin to work for Lisk. So I was in London before. So yeah, that's basically it. I mean, it's a very long story. So
how did you end up working for Lisk? Did you find them yourselves?
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, kind of. I mean, I was maintaining an open source project, a socket cluster. So it's a general purpose real-time library, so for WebSockets. And actually, I saw on the Gitter, I was using Gitter to interact with the community. And I saw actually Meche, it was Meche, who was the lead developer at Lisk. And he was asking questions about WebSockets, that sort of thing. So, and I kind of was answering him. And I clicked on his profile, and that's where I saw Lisk. I saw a little icon, Lisk. I thought, what's that? And I clicked on it, and I was like, blockchain. And then, I was always a little bit skeptical of Bitcoin initially because, I think one thing I didn't really understand that there was, how huge a problem there is in our society related to money and finance, like how huge a problem it is. I sort of underestimated. That's one thing. And the other, I was a little bit, I wasn't a huge fan, because of global warming and that sort of thing. I wasn't a huge fan of the how much electricity it uses. And when I found out Lisk, I thought it really it solved this problem, which to me it was becoming more and more important. That this was a really significant problem, and it was doing so in a more efficient way. So as a developer, for me, something which is more efficient is better. So of course there are drawbacks, and now I understand some of the nuances, and I kind of understand Bitcoin's position, how it earned that position in the market. But yeah, so that's why I was really excited about Lisk. So I thought this is like it solves the same problem, but in a more efficient way. So, and I generally like this idea of the DPoS with the delegates, and it's kind of like a bit like democracy. So yeah, this appealed to me. So I called up, I can't remember who, no, I added Max on LinkedIn, I think it was, and then he, I can't remember, I sent him a message, and he actually called me back, and it was like, yeah, it was, then convinced me to come, and that was, yeah, that was it.
And how long did you work there?
So I worked there for 2 years. So I was a developer, and then I ended up leading the P2P team. So until I left for a few months. So yeah.
And actually, does the idea with developing a DEX also come from that? Because the P2P team is probably also working on it.
There was not really, but there. I mean, some of the we're building an SDK, so the platform that we're building had to fit for it had to accommodate for a lot of use cases, and definitely one of the use cases among many that we had we had in mind, like all developers, was DEX and others. But it wasn't, we're not working towards the DEX at all. It was just, we were building the platform that would make the DEX possible. So, yeah. And this is really what I was very excited about, this idea of custom modules. I've written some articles about this. For me, this is the main feature of Lisk. There's a lot of focus on custom transactions, which is nice, but yeah, for me, custom modules was really the killer feature, which I feel it didn't really get the attention it deserved, and I didn't feel that it would get the attention it deserved. So it's kind of like why I decided to, in my spare time, to work on the DEX and to launch it as a module. So it is a custom module, and it just fits really nicely with the architecture that we had in mind. So yeah, so that's it.
Cool. So when you left, you started to work full-time on your DEX and on leasehold, or are you also doing other things next to it? So yeah, I mean, I was working on it as part of leasehold. So I mean, so firstly, before I left Lisk, I had made a prototype. It was kind of a working prototype, and then yeah, so after that point, so there was a disagreement I had with the founders about the direction of the project, and I felt that it was more important to start sooner than later. So it was just some typical disagreement, and but I was really for me it was really important. I felt that if Lisk was going to succeed as a blockchain, we'd have to be able to adapt to change. So we can't just have a thing, finish it, and then it's done, and then that's it, and people build on top. I didn't feel like this model would succeed. I feel that all the things that tend to work are things that can evolve over time. So yeah, I mean, it's good to have some structure, but I think in reality, there's only so much structure you can have. Yeah, before it doesn't work. People have really different needs, and it needs to be fine-tuned. And this is decentralized, so I feel like we need an ecosystem that's not planned top-down, if you like. I think it needs to be bottom-up. That's my view. But so that was kind of a disagreement, and what led me to because I didn't feel that this top-down approach or the DEX I had planned would fit into this top-down planning. So yeah, that's why I knew I had to quit and do it on my own, go solo. So I've been working on it as part of leasehold on the side, but leasehold itself is quite a different use case. So I see them kind of as different. LDEX is like a federation of DEX.
Whereas leasehold is just it's one market on that DEX. And we have very different business cases, but I really like that leasehold has a very hands-on, like a practical use case, and we try to tie together real business with blockchain. And I think not many people are doing that now. People are very happy to launch a bunch of technology, but they're not really making use of it. So I know for me it's very speculative, and I just don't have that mindset. And I'm not capable, to be honest, of succeeding in such environments. So I'm just waiting. I hope things just go back to normal. I feel like COVID-19 just made things even more, insane. And the elections coming up in the US, it's just really difficult time. So but I can't do anything else. I'm just I'm just a coder. I code and I try to do the most efficient thing I can do with my time. So
that's awesome to see. I think it's you have a point with developing an ecosystem that it is also good to see the bottom-up approach, and I think it's really helpful for the whole ecosystem that guys like you are doing this, but also that, for example, Michiel started with Arcado and Tom together, so that you see that people who have worked with Lisk also try to develop the ecosystem. And I think both are good and both are essential. So it's really cool that you're doing this. And indeed, I think this technology can be used for so much good solutions, and I think the time is getting more and more mature, more and more ripe for these solutions. So let's go to your solution, or let's go to the presentation, what you made, what you want to do.
Yeah. So I mean, it probably will get a bit technical, but yeah. So let's go ahead. I'll share my screen. Oh, wait, first let me check. Got everything in place. That's good. Okay, I'll share my screen now. So I think this is good enough. I think I have to stop my camera. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, I can't see it. So I mean, I can't see on the video at least. Okay, so everyone can see my screen. So okay, so I'll just go through kind of the steps. I didn't quite get to the last part. I didn't get to finish it, but I can continue in a follow-up video. So yeah, so how to, but I mean, this should, I think once I'm done with this, you should have a pretty good idea, and I think most developers should be able to do it on their own. So yeah, so can you see what I'm looking at now? Can you see my browser?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So yeah, so basically these are the steps. So you just need to have Git here, Node.js, Docker. So just install each of these things. So basically, so first you need to SSH and then install all of these on the remote machine. So npm2, and also you need to have a gzip, the command. I'm not sure if it's by default on some Linux distributions. Yeah, I'm not sure, but you can get it here, just apt-get install. Okay, so yeah, and you need to install Postgres client as well. So that's the PSQL. I use Docker, I mentioned, to manage Postgres, but you can, you don't need Docker. You can also install it directly as a server. So yeah, so the first step is to, I'm first going to SSH into the remote machine. And see, I think it's this one. So I created this before because otherwise it would take too long. And Murphy's Law as well. I want to, like last time, have problems. So Lisk code testnet. Yeah, so the first step is just to do npm install. So I already did it, so I'm not going to do it again, but basically just npm install. Yeah, oh, sorry. So firstly, so what I did is I git cloned, I should probably bring it up. Result core. I think if I copy this, I think like that. Yeah, so this is the leasehold core repo. So actually it's just, so I made so one problem with the DEX, so I didn't want to have different sidechains slowing each other down. And so unfortunately because Lisk core is currently runs on one process. I mean, I don't know, there was a plan to run it on multiple CPU cores, but I think that was put on the back burner. So, but for the DEX, it was absolutely essential to have it running on multiple processes because I don't want to have sidechains to slow each other down. So the idea is that each module, if each module runs in a separate process, if you have a computer with a lot of CPU cores, they don't slow each other down. So it does, I mean, the main bottleneck then is bandwidth, but generally this is really, it's rarely a bottleneck. So actually you can scale really far across a single machine based on the number of CPU cores that you have. So this is why I made a framework, which is a little bit like the Lisk controller. So in Lisk core, there is something called Lisk controller. So it's basically the same thing, but it works on multiple processes, and it's more geared towards the DEX use case. So it's not optimized for the blockchain. It's more for running a lot of blockchains. And also the key feature that I wanted that I felt was missing from Lisk core was I wanted to allow modules to, so instead of, for example, if I want to add a module to my code, in Lisk core, you have to kind of recompile the whole thing with your module inside. You have to register the module in the code. I felt this was a bit cumbersome, and I wanted to allow developers to define modules in a config file. So using a config file. So so the structure that I came up with is actually just similar to the config JSON. It's just basically a rearrangement of the way config JSON was set up in Lisk core. But the idea is you have kind of this was mostly for backwards compatibility reasons. So there's a base configuration. So this is kind of like all these properties in this base here. So all here and above, like all that. So this is available to every module. So every module that is plugged into this framework, it uses, it can access these properties. So they kind of all share these properties, but also they can overwrite them. So it's like things like where to store the logs, what kind of error log level, what database to use by default, what the rewards, so this, in the case of a blockchain, what kind of rewards, like the milestones, the block time, this kind of thing, number of delegates. So yeah, so all this is this is just the default. So but then each module, so the idea is you have the idea of this framework is that you can run multiple blockchains on a single framework. And you do that by through modules. And the way you achieve that is you just declare the module. So you need to, first you need to have the module installed, so using NPM. And then you can just define your, kind of instances of that module. So you can have, for example, multiple Lisk blockchains on a single node, for example. But that's kind of not very useful. But I mean, if you have many CPU cores and they all, each module that you define here, they run in parallel. So because each module gets its own process. So yeah, you can. There are some benefits, but it's not as interesting. What's mostly interesting about this approach is that you can have like one source code module, and you can use it to launch multiple instances with some slight differences between them. So, for example, I could launch I could use for example, the leasehold blockchain. So there's a module. It's basically just a module called leasehold chain. That's it. And I could just launch another module, so another instance, which kind of behaves exactly the same as leasehold, except maybe configurations are different. So maybe it has a different number of delegates, or it has different reward, and I just use the same code. So, and this is kind of like how model how a sidechain is launched. So I mean, some modules are kind of like general purpose. Here, Leasehold app. This is kind of like, it's actually from Lisk, the Lisk net hash, broad hash. There's a network module. So actually, this has a network module as well. It's the same code actually, so it's not big difference. As seed peers here. So, and we have this is the basically because the Lisk chain. So the Lisk actually has a chain module in core. But it needed to be more configurable, and also there was some. It was not fully isolated from the other processes, so I had to do a bit of extra work to isolate it. So, but this is just a Lisk chain module with some a bit of cleanup to detach it fully from other modules. But actually, my delegate node, which has been running for like several months, it uses this module. So actually, what you see when I'm forging a block is actually on Lisk blockchain. It's actually using that module, not the one from Lisk core. But it's the same protocol, so there's no the other nodes don't notice any difference. And it stores the data exactly the same. The database is exactly the same. The properties are pretty much exactly the same that end up passed to Lisk. There's just some minor differences. So each sidechain is basically made up of 2 modules. So there is the chain module. So in this case, like Lisk chain, and then there's the HTTP module. So which you don't have to define, but you can. And if you want to expose the internals of the chain module, so sorry, the API, basically the HTTP API of the chain module. So this is the HTTP API for the Lisk chain module. So I can turn it on and off. There's a property called, I don't know if I can see here. Module enabled. So any module. So each of those, you see like Leasehold chain, Leasehold HTTP API. These are modules. They're definitions of the module, and this is like the config which to the module. And it basically any property in here can override properties from the base, basically. But yeah, don't worry too much about the base. It's mostly what's going on here. For example, if you look at Leasehold, you can see that there are 39 delegates, and the milestone is there's only one. There's no the milestones is in Lisk is to when you have block reduction, so block reward reduction. That's the milestone. So in this case, there's only one, and there's no actually I don't know. It says the reward, so it's just 0. Actually, this is the reward is always 0. There's no inflation. So in Leasehold, it's deflationary. So the HTTP module. So this is the HTTP module for the Leasehold chain. So and you can see it's kind of hooked up to Leasehold chain. So it's referencing it here. So it just kind of exposes Leasehold chain. And yeah, the idea is you can just copy paste like any of those. You can duplicate, change the names, and then you can have set up a new blockchain basically on the same node. So a node can have as many blockchains, just copy paste and change the names, change the delegates. You change what you want to change, you just copy paste in this config. So you can do everything from this config file. So maybe in the future it would be good to split up over multiple config files, but for now, to keep it simple, I just have it in one config file. So there's a module. This is a DEX module. So disabled by default, and so it's using the ListDEX module, and basically it just interacts with the 2 other modules. So the Lisk module and the Leasehold module. So this is for the Leasehold Lisk market LSH/LSK, and it has its own HTTP API. So it's a general pattern. Modules is you have the main module that does the actual thing, the logic, and you have another module which is just HTTP API. And this is just a pattern that's evolved. But there's no fixed way to do anything. Yeah. So maybe I will go through my notes here. So basically, how to create a sidechain. So basically, you just start by I already SSH'd into this. So here I'm looking at a remote node. So, and I'm inside the leasehold code testnet, I called it. So this is just a clone of that repository of the whole thing. So I just git clone that. I'll actually, maybe I'll paste the link to this this gist that has all the steps. Yeah, and yeah, so I already did this. So then you just do npm install. So you just install all the dependencies. So I'm not going to do it again because I already did. Then you need to run the Postgres with your password. This is the top level password for the Postgres user. So, and that's just, I use Docker. So you don't need to use Docker. You can use you can run the Postgres service. And then so that also downloads the image. It's pretty convenient. So, but then once you have the image running, so it downloads it, then runs it, and then you connect to it using PSQL. And yeah, and then and then you you kind of use PSQL to create the database. So basically, the idea is every time you want to create a sidechain, create a database for it. So like create database LDEX, Lisk test, and then I mean, this is just the first time you create the user, so I just use a list. So I mean, you could use the Postgres user, but I always knew it's better to have a separate user for security reasons. So I just create a Lisk user with my pass, and I mean, this is similar to Lisk core. So and then I grant all privileges on the Lisk test database that I created here. So Lisk is like so each chain, so each blockchain sidechain is a module. And so I have just one user, which is going to have several databases underneath. So, and each module will get its own database. So in the same Postgres instance, it's just more convenient. You could have different databases, it doesn't really matter. And that's kind of a thing that I was keen on pushing, was that I didn't feel that it would be practical to have all the side chains use exactly the same technology. And I feel the design is quite rigid and does not account for evolution, of the economics, like of technology as well. Like if maybe we want to have like quantum resistant encryption, then we need a different address system than what we have now for Lisk, for example, and maybe it's easier to just create a new sidechain for that. Then because if in the future if blockchain becomes really mainstream, it's going to be difficult to kind of force everyone to upgrade at once. So it's kind of like maybe it's better just have a more fluid system where people can launch new sidechains. Maybe it will be a failure, maybe it won't. And then if that works out, then maybe people will be interested in this coin and it will start to buy it. So I envision something fluid, more fluid than a top-down rigid thing that never changes. I understand the incentives. There are very strong incentives to have everything top-down controlled, everything playing with a rigid structure, like in Ethereum, for example, but I don't think it's going to work. I just don't think it's going to work ultimately. I think people will try, but I don't think so. In the long term, I think there should be, each sidechain should be allowed to have different. On the language, in terms of programming languages, it's very much JavaScript oriented now, but maybe in the future people will find other ways to kind of package maybe some other binaries or C or whatever, Python as modules and kind of connect it to the structure maybe. But I kind of want something more less homogeneous, more variety in between different sidechains and blockchains. So this is so basically I use for the Lisk module. So this is Lisk chain. And then we gave them privileges. So let's move on. So you need to download the snapshot. This is a Lisk snapshot for testnet. So it can take a while. And then, then afterwards you import it. So I just put some useful commands that everyone will, I find them very useful. So gzip to just, import into our database, which we created here. So this is just, we import a snapshot for Lisk, and then let's see, what is this? This is like, when that repo, so this is the leasehold core on GitHub. It defaults, the config file is for mainnet. So that step here is just to actually, because we provide a testnet version, so it has different configurations. So like the port numbers are different. So we provide this, so you just replace the mainnet one with new config. And then you can make additional changes. But for mainnet, you would just skip this step because you'd already have the mainnet one. So the idea is different nodes that belong to the same blockchain need to have matching configs. So in order to agree about the number of delegates and the rewards and the milestones, etc. So here is something you need to set the database. It was Lisk test, and actually that is pretty much it to run a Lisk node. So all this part, if you wanted to use this framework, this multi-process framework to run a Lisk node, you can, Lisk 2.0. So I could update it. It shouldn't be too difficult for Lisk 3.0, but for now it's just Lisk 2.0. So and then you go to next step, which is creating a custom side chain. So you need to create a Genesis block first and delegates. So you can use the Lisk Genesis tool. It's by Cobifex, so it's really good, very flexible. So I actually made a script. Maybe I'll share later. But I made a script that sort of just generates the Genesis block, and it just puts everything in one account and then you distribute manually. It's easier. But you have to basically you have to launch a blockchain, then distribute and launch kind of situation. So, but there's no correct way to set it up, so long as it ends up distributed between evenly and decentralized. So so you can just follow the steps here. I think better. But I'll share my script later. So I'll add something here I look to do. So I'll share some gists to show how the script I use to generate Genesis block and the delegates. So so now the next part is just to set up. So I showed the config JSON before. So first you need to copy. So it's better, of course, to generate the Genesis block on your local machine, secure system, and then you just you can copy the Genesis block to the remote machine, like this, for example. It's not my real IP, but and then the idea is you can use the same code with a different Genesis block. It's kind of similar to Lisk, really, but it's just you do it through the config file is the main difference. So then, compared to Lisk core. So so you just define inside config JSON. So what you can do, so you could actually, this is why I was looking at the Lisk core before, is leasehold core is because leasehold chain. So you can actually just rename this. So there are a sidechain in reality does not need to run the Lisk it does not need to run the Lisk module. But if you want, but some nodes in that sidechain, if you want that sidechain to be connected to Lisk, then they need to run the Lisk module as well. So they need to run both modules. And the reason is because so some nodes are special, they kind of DEX nodes. So DEX federation can be made up of up to 15 validators, 15 members. And when you launch a DEX, so when you launch a new sidechain, some of the nodes have to be part of that federation. Not all of them, but some of them at least. So that in these nodes that are members of the federation, they are the ones who are responsible for matching and signing cross-chain trades in a decentralized way using multi-signature wallets. So it's a relatively simple mechanism, which is what appealed to me. Yeah, like compared to SPV proofs and atomic swaps, it really gets rid of a lot of problems. It adds a new layer of trust, but I feel that it is decentralized enough, like to get the job done. And also the big benefit of it is it's decentralized, but also it's fully transparent. So the output, so everything that the DEX does can be seen on either blockchain or both, in fact. So if, for example, you had a federation, and let's say in a very unlikely all people in this federation are conspiring together, you will be able to see evidence of conspiracy and bad acting. I don't know how to say, basically fraud. You'd see that on the blockchain. So if they did not match the trades according to set out in the code, you would see it on the blockchain. So I feel that this total transparency, the fact that everything is on the blockchain, makes it okay to have a little bit less decentralization. Because, for example, if you look at Ethereum, it's way more decentralized because you have, when you have a smart contract, like a DEX on Ethereum, every node in the entire Ethereum network is involved. But it's also why it doesn't scale currently. Until they do sharding, it doesn't scale because every ERC20 token, which is running as part of Ethereum, is effectively slowing down Ethereum. That's why they pay Ethereum fees. So in this case, we don't have this problem. So this is because the DEX and the sidechains, they can have separate infrastructure with some overlap, but not total overlap, like in the case of Ethereum. So yeah, but in Ethereum, it's of course more decentralized because if you have every Ethereum nodes, I don't know, and every trade on the DEX goes through every node essentially. I know they have some innovations like ZK rollups, but I mean these add a lot of complexity on top, and we get to see it's a bit like Lightning Network. We're not sure. We'll have to see if it's successful or not at a scale. If every exchange starts doing it on Ethereum, will it work? I don't know. Maybe, but yeah. But this is kind of the downside of Ethereum. One is that you have every node is kind of competing for resources on the network because every trade has to be validated by the entire network. So, which is not the case here. So, yeah. So this is the Genesis block. I think. Oh, sorry, I was looking at this. Okay. Let's see. So for simplicity, I can't remember if this is important. Okay, so you just define it. Leasehold chain, so this here, and we just renamed it to our own. You can name it whatever you want, and we'll use the same code though. So basically, we let the lease module, chain module, to act as a source for this blockchain. So it's a different blockchain that uses the same code, if you like. And another benefit, because we point explicitly to the module, it means that if later leasehold chain there's a patch bug, we benefit from that update as well. So it's like we are really part of the network. So because we share the same code, we just have different configurations about We could actually, leasehold does not have a reward, but we could change it so that we do have a reward, and we can have milestones and a different number of delegates, and like we could add more, make it even more customizable. I didn't put too much, I was kind of limited how much we can configure it, but you can configure a lot of things anyway. Okay, and also the names of the modules have to, so the module names must have underscores, not dashes like this. But you can have like the npm module can have a dash, but not the name of the Lisk module, if you like. This is I call it module instance. So it's an instance of a module. So you have a module and a template, and using this template, you can have multiple instances that share the same code with different configurations. And so the general pattern I mentioned before is HTTP API. So you have a chain module, and then you have an HTTP API. So you don't have to have it. You don't have to even define it, or you can define it and then put module enabled false, and you just toggle it on and off. And you can set the HTTP port. You have to be careful not to have two different HTTP modules. If you have many blockchains on one node, you have to be careful not to have HTTP ports conflicting. So you need to have each HTTP API needs to have a different port. Okay, and so this is how to create a sidechain. So actually, it's as we did for Lisk. So you just, you log into the Postgres using the PSQL client. Then you create a database. So we call it demo test. So we kind of try to stick to naming conventions. So it's testnet. So if it was mainnet, it would be demo main. So, and then we give privileges for demo test. So to the Lisk user. So we just have basically use the same Postgres server, and we have multiple databases inside, and we just for convenience. And then so once you've done that, so you just basically, so you can do this, you rename this to demo chain or whatever you want to call it. Just you change the name there, and that's the name of the chain. You can set how many delegates you want. You can take this here, you can copy it, make a duplicate, and that's another blockchain. Then you can add, configure it. And then you just start the node. And when you start, it's going to up, each one is going to go through each of those modules. So each of those under the modules heading. So here, this is the top level module. It goes through each one and it launches them. There's some way to express dependency if there are dependencies between them. So this is possible. It's done in the code. But it's actually using Nazar's lib related to the module structure. So it's actually uses the exact same structure. I don't know if I have it open. It's basically the same. It follows a lib exactly. It has a few added properties to specify dependencies, but apart from that, it's the same. So, the dependencies just help the framework decide the order in which to launch modules. So, if, for example, you have this module, if you have like this module is a HTTP API for the leasehold chain, so it means the leasehold chain needs to launch first. So, there's a you can define that the leasehold HTTP API must it relies on leasehold chain. So that way, this one first and then that one, because they all launch on different processes. So it has to be somewhat coordinated, but they have to be, because you launch on different processes, there has to be some failure tolerance, which is why I had to create a new module for Lisk chain to run in that framework. So LDEM Lisk chain. So it had to, like, for example, if one of the, so the process crashes and the other one is still running, so it needs to handle that case better. Whereas if it's all running in one process, that doesn't happen. It's either the whole process crashes. So in this case, you can have one process crash, but the other one's still up. So it needs to handle that case. So that's why we had this. But the leasehold chain module is kind of does it natively. So, but it's just essentially the Lisk code. There aren't many glue logic outside in how it connects and how it waits for things asynchronously. So there's a few differences, but the internal logic, like I didn't touch most parts. So, and as I said, I use, and actually there's similar LDEM Lisk chain and leasehold chain, very similar, and I use it my delegate on the Lisk blockchain. So yeah, it's been running pretty well so far. So hopefully it will continue. But yeah. Okay, so the launch side. Okay, this is leasehold net. What was that for? This is so that if you have a small, so if it's a very small, so but the idea is they're all, but they kind of find each other. But if the network, for example, if you have a very small, they might not find each other immediately. So in this case, you'd want to provide some fixed peers. So you provide just a few. If it's a very small network, just 2 nodes, they can just add each other as peers. So you just make sure they stay connected. Also, there's in Lisk blockchain, there's a shuffling mechanism. So it's random. So from time to time, it just picks and disconnects a random node. You have nodes in, and it picks a random one, and it happens to be the only peer that has the same sidechain as you. Then they will become temporarily disconnected. They will reconnect, but it can cause problems. You don't want to have partition in the blockchain. So this is only for a small network. As it gets bigger, the probability of becoming fully detached from all nodes which share your sidechain is like impossible, basically, at one point beyond a certain size. So yeah, so that's the idea. But in the meantime, when you have 3 nodes, you can just specify one or more of the nodes can add each other as fixed peers until the network gets to a certain size, and you can just move it. So this is all in the config file. Yeah, and this is just how to define a DEX market for the sidechain. Let's say here we created the HTTP API. Okay, so we created a new in the config. So it's just editing this one. And yeah, so we just edited that one. We created a new, and then you can just connect it. You just define a new module, and see the module path here is saying use the Lisk DEX as the module, as the code. And we enabled it, and we just tell it, so what blockchains, so this is a DEX. So how we define a DEX market is just only files, just add that to the config file. We just tell it what the Lisk DEX code, where it is, where to find it, is in the node module folder. Then we tell it which chains are involved in this market. So here we just have Lisk and our token demo. See, and we point to the module. We need to kind of the DEX. This is a DEX module. The DEX, so it needs to connect to both blockchains. So it needs to both blockchain modules. So we have here on our node we have the Lisk chain module, and on the same node we have the demo chain. And this Lisk DEX module, it gets data from, it just lets it fetch data from both, and to submit transactions to the modules, and then the modules propagate through the network. So that's it. And yeah, and also the DEX has a HTTP API, just like the sidechain. So DEX also has its own API, which is separate. So you can see the order book, and you can see pending transactions, recently processed transactions, yeah, and things like this. So yeah, so you can copy paste this object, tell it which where the chain modules are, and that's it. And then I need to provide also, so this is a paradigm cover, but you need to create basically 2 multi-sig wallets on each blockchain. So so it's to create a market is not going to be like a 1 hour thing. It's going to take a day, or if you have some experience. If you don't have experience, it might take a couple of days. It could possibly get faster, but it takes a bit of time because we have to make it flexible. But the idea is you have to manually create you create a wallet on each chain. So 2 multi-sig wallets, and all the participants sign this multi-sig wallet. So they can have everyone on both chains creates this wallet. So, and the idea is you should, in principle, have each individual member of the group. So you have up to 15 on the LDEX, which is this one. We have 12. We have 12 members, and also each market can have different members. So you can have a different multi-sig wallet, but for security reasons, it's better if. And that's a policy of LDEX. We want to have 80% of our members present on all the markets that are visible on our federation. So just so that there are some names you can recognize, in the past you continue to trust them for new markets. But we also allow new members to join. So if you want to have someone knows a lot about a specific domain, and then they want to be a member of our and we just give them a seat, and they can earn fees in that way, and it's very easy for them because we have experience and we can guide them on how to set up a node, and it's just automatic, like they just get paid dividends based on the number of trades, and so the amount of trades, and a lot of things are configurable. You can configure the rate. So this is like it's not a percentage, it's actually 0.1. So it's as a rate. And that's the current fee. It's kind of low. DEXs, I don't think they are meant to be as high volume. Charge like 0.1 but also it's 0.1 on each chain as well. So and the fees are paid in both currencies. So you actually collect, as a DEX operator, you collect fees on every blockchain that you participate in. On both chains, on chain. You don't collect because they're paid out in dividends on a weekly basis, but that's also configurable. So you provide, so the idea is basically you create chains, then you provide the wallet address. You need to have the passphrase that was used. This is because the new Lisk version, they're getting rid of that shared passphrase. So this is basically the passphrase that was used to create the wallet, but after the members join, then that passphrase no longer can. So it's just there to create a transaction, but it can't move any funds. So it doesn't have to be secret. There's no point to share it, but this is a passphrase that each individual member of the multi-sig wallet should never share. And you would have to put there. You can put it as encrypted. There's an alternative property. You just call it encrypted passphrase, or you can put encrypted shared passphrase as well. But hopefully this shared passphrase will go away. It just doesn't add any value. But but the passphrase is each member who participates in this market has this definition basically, and then they specify what their passphrase is. And so if you have, which requires out of 12, in our case, it requires 6 signatures. It means that, so they all watch the blockchain, and if they see matching, and they construct an order book, and if they see matching trades, so matching orders, on both blockchains, they will execute trades, they will sign trade, they all sign, and then and they distribute each other's signature. They just pass around the signatures, and if they can get 6 signatures, then the trade will go through, it will go on chain. Also, this happens to be quite fork resilient, because if, for example, there is a fork, it's extremely unlikely that, especially at the federation, increasingly unlikely that all of the nodes will end up on the same chain, and so on the bad fork. In fact, it's like they'll most nodes will be on the good fork. So So it's, and if there is no agreement, so 50-50 fork, the nodes will not be able to reach consensus, so the trades will not go. So actually, it kind of, I mean, there's still some risk. There can be, maybe through some manipulation that, like the majority of nodes are tricked into going into the wrong chain somehow, but that would with the underlying technology of the blockchain. But I mean, if that happened, if there can be any chain in there, I mean, but this is like, and the bigger the federation it is, so, but it's naturally resilient, and also you can account. It detects a fork as quickly as possible is the other thing. So, so it's very unlikely that all or even more than a few nodes would stay on the fork for more a few seconds. Like it's, yeah, there are some trade-offs. It should be analyzed more, but also it can be accounted in terms of you can add extra fee as well to account for any risks. But so far we haven't seen any happening, and theoretically it seems like basically impossible. But we'll have to see. But okay, so let's continue. So okay, that's it. So you have to set up the multi-sig wallets. You have to set them up the best way. Just make 2 multi-sig wallets, one on each blockchain that is involved. Then you just provide them inside the config here. Yeah, so just here. So you just provide the passphrase, recommended encrypted passphrase or encrypted shared passphrase, and the wallet address of the DEX. Okay. And then once you have your, I'll show connect to, so actually I'll run the node. I don't really need to run it, I think. Let's see. I already have another node. I'll just connect to, yeah, Murphy's law is, could be a problem. Okay, well, I'll just launch and connect to an existing, on testnet, an existing sidechain Lisk. Just a joke. I never plan to launch it. Just it's just that what it's called. Okay. No, that's wrong. Okay. So here we have the mark. You can see this is the address. This is a multi-sig, and this as well. So this is the same multi-sig wallet. You have the Lisk blockchain and one on the leasehold blockchain. And these are the members. So in fact, we have, each member has 2 keys. So we can internally keep track of who has both keys. So we distribute, all the members know who is who. We could also tell publicly who has which wallets. It would have been nice to have the same address on both chains, but because of the replay attack, we can't do that right now, but we can look into it in the next version, possibly. So, and that would simplify this, and at least, so it's the same person. So here's a number of signatures that this market, so each market rules and defined in the code. So it's really hands-off. You don't need to interact with it much or at all. In fact, just runs, it processes trades, it pays you. You tell it how many signatures it needs for a trade to go through. At least 6 have to, well, there are 24, but each person controls 2. So 6 out of these, out of each pair, 6 of them needs to sign each trade for it to go through, or else it doesn't. You can resync. So if something didn't go right, if there's some emergency or some weird thing, you can, or it just blocked. I mean, that never happened yet, but you can always go back in history. You just go back to an older snapshot. The DEX keeps track of snapshots. You just go back to an early snapshot and it will resync. So there's everything is deterministic. So there's only one possible trade that can happen given the blockchain state. So they're all, so all the good nodes agree about each other, about the state of the order book and the state of, and the transfers that occur. And there's some few things like the 10 leaseholds, the exchange fee base is just because to cover blockchain fees, base fee. So we could make it higher. This is just 0.1. If it was a dynamic fees, we would probably make it just a bit higher. We'd add some, and this would be like kind of like profit, could affect the profitability. So we would want to make it higher, like at the kind of around the max possibly. And this is the rate. So it's a 0.1%. You can have different. When the trade goes through, it just takes out the 0.1, and all the nodes have to agree about these rules. If they are not going to process, they're not going to, and they're not going to get dividends. They won't get paid. So to get paid, they need to agree and need to process sign the same thing. And yeah, so required confirmations. See, this is to avoid forks. So you can make it as long as you want. If you make it, there's no way in the world that you're going to get a fork issue. But as I said, because you have many nodes in the federation, forks should be like almost impossible. But if you have, like, you can make this number higher anyway, just to get extra assurance. But ideally, the possibility of forks, which so far we haven't had any in the leasehold chain in several months, is the possibility of forks should be factored into the cost. But I mean, it would be nice to have it to actually. I'm not a mathematician, so I didn't look in. I didn't analyze this, but yeah, it would be nice to look into it more deeply, see how fork can affect. But yeah, it's like it's the bigger the federation, the less likely. So then, also we can do things have. Yeah, we could have like a single DEX member could have multiple nodes, and then they have a more surface. So they can sort of get a better idea of the network. Yeah, and this is the order expiry. So orders have to order book. We want to process things as soon as possible, but we do take limit orders. So yeah, so we need to have an expiry where the order will be just refunded time. Okay. Sorry, any questions or? Oh yeah, I wanted to show. I can show a trade. Maybe. Oh, sorry. No, I'll just do the other way. So this is like. Wait, I was going to show actually how to add. So this is So this is testnet. We have a market called so leasehold Lisk, and we can add. I'll just copy this. So just add the URL to the API of the. Just add it to the config file. This is the app. This is a LDEX UI. This is this client application. So you just save. So you just add the config file to point to DEX market, and then it will show up. Should show up, yeah, here. So yeah. So you just can click back and forth, and you can see also the different. So each market can have different members, and so but you can see at least what the rule is. And this is a history. This is calculated from the blockchain, so it's decentralized. So it's actually calculated on the client side. The client looks at the blockchain data and figures out this chart. And you can sign in here, and yeah. Okay. So yeah, any questions? Sorry. Yeah, that's it. Any questions? I'll stop streaming.
Thank you so much for your talk. Already, it's really gives a lot of insight, and you've taken a lot of time to walk through everything. I think people can post questions in the general chat, and otherwise, I also have a couple. So, for example, it's not that technical, I think, but what is the difference between custom transactions and modules? What you said before.
Yeah. So a custom transaction is just it's like a list transaction, which can have it can do. It's not just a transfer of money necessarily. from one wallet to another, it can do other things. So it can be anything, and that's the idea of custom transaction. You can have you can have like a payback transaction that pays you back a portion, or I suppose you could add. You could have one that maybe goes to multiple wallets in one transaction, or I'm not. So yeah, this is kind of a custom transaction, and it has to on all the nodes that participate in a specific network have to have the same custom transactions in order to for the blockchain to work. But the custom module is just like it's like an add-on that you add to your. You can use it to either extend the functionality of Lisk, or it could be a separate blockchain, and you can kind of mix and match them, and it doesn't have to be every node in the network has them. So you can have only some nodes in the network have a specific custom module, and they can form a subnet with each other and interact with each other without affecting the main or slowing down the main Lisk network. So a custom module is what I like about it is it doesn't have to be on all the nodes in the network. It can be useful even if it runs on a subset, and it can still be decentralized, though to a lesser extent.
Thanks. I also see a question from Sul. I'm not sure if that's a relevant question right now, but do you have any thoughts on how kick-in, the kick-in hearing with the SEC may impact other cryptos that undertook ICOs?
Do
you have?
I haven't heard of it. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, that's. I think. Yeah, was that a long time ago or is it recent news? Because I heard something. Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, I think generally regulators. I mean, so far they've sort of in the EU they kind of make a distinct case for really small tokens that haven't picked up. So, but definitely if we grow to a certain size, we'll have to get really serious with the paperwork. Yeah, but in the EU, I saw if your token has a market cap of, the circulating tokens less than 5 million, they kind of don't care. So it's actually good that one country has put forward some clear regulation about that. But of course we would have to get really serious about. But it's mostly a matter of just letting them know, I think. We'll have to check. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's go. Let's go to. Oh, sorry. Sorry.
Yeah. For now, the good thing, they don't want to. I don't quash the action that's happening. Projects, not really. They don't seem to be of. Much. They explicitly say that you don't need to tell them if your market cap is less than 5 million. So it is quite a big amount.
Yeah.
And circulating tokens. Yeah.
A more technical question. You said updating to Lisk, I think 3.0 would be possible. Are you also looking at updating to the latest 5.0 SDK in the future?
Yeah, we can update to all of them. The point is the DEX module. It can interact with any chain. It's JavaScript now, so you could, in theory, make a wrapper that's written in JavaScript for something that's not JavaScript. There are like eight endpoints that need to be exposed by. So it basically could run any. You can connect, in theory, any blockchain as a sidechain, which has 3 features. Fast block times is one requirement. It needs to support multi-signature wallets, like relatively simple. You could probably do it with Ethereum through smart contracts, since you can implement multi-sig with that. And the other thing, it needs to have a data field. It doesn't need to be big. I think it's 64 bytes. So 64 bytes. So if it has these 3, if the blockchain has these 3 features, and you can, in theory, create an adapter that allows it to connect to the DEX. And the adapter only needs to expose about 8 to 10 endpoints. So which are relatively simple. It's just like get me the block at height, blah blah. Get me the multi-sig wallet. Get me the list of members for this multi-sig wallet. Things like that. So in theory, it doesn't matter what happens, how Lisk evolves. We can make an adapter around it, or we can hopefully we can just take the module, the new Lisk chain module, and just plug it in, and just if there are any endpoints that are missing, we can add them. So we can integrate with Lisk service. Also, you could, in theory, you could run on different machine. You could have a different module or running in a completely managed separately outside of this framework. So yeah, it shouldn't be a big challenge. But yeah, we'll see. I mean, I already have a rough idea of all the features, so yeah, we'll have to start looking into it soon and testing.
Yeah. Are you also planning to connect to other blockchains outside the Lisk ecosystem? For example, Ethereum.
Yeah, I was really keen on Ethereum. I looked into it's just a matter of time, and that's why also I want to out, because it's really like I know nothing about Ethereum, and I know high level stuff, but I never wrote a smart contract in my life. So if it's kind of not. I mean, there are plenty of multi-sig solutions as smart contracts that we could use, but of course it would be better if someone else did it and we can work together. Yeah, I wanted to integrate Ethereum at one point. I looked into it; it's a lot of work to launch. Like it's just so large. Like the space usage is like I don't know how many gigabytes, like a terabyte. I don't know. I've heard. But and it's like there's no also, it doesn't expose as many, it's not as flexible in terms of search. So it's like often they try to point you to like a centralized search to find out, to search the Ethereum blockchain, to be very raw. Like I was kind of surprised. I was used to Lisk, and Lisk has a lot of search features, and yeah, so that's kind of. I mean, there probably are that kind of aggregate the Ethereum block data and then give you expose a search API. So then that could be done. So I'd have to. It requires really a lot of knowledge to get into it, which is why I haven't looked into it as much as I wanted. Maybe Bitcoin might be easier, but the problem is Bitcoin does not have fast block times. It's like how much, like 10 minutes, or yeah, I'm not sure, more. So yeah, it's kind of slow, so it's not great for that reason, but we could adapt it maybe to match Bitcoin. I mean, there would definitely be a lot of demand, so there's a strong incentive. I mean, Ethereum as well, but Ethereum already have DeFi, so I think like they might not be interested to why use alternative if they have their own. But I think maybe for scalability reasons, Ethereum, if they don't succeed in implementing sharding fast enough to meet with market demand, that's the opportunity for us. But yeah, I mean, they have so yeah, we'll see.
Perfect.
And definitely have to look at them again if they do succeed.
Yeah. Thanks. Thanks for your time, and thanks for the elaborate explanation, and also thanks for the answers of the questions. I'm sure that John would like to answer all the other questions that are posted in the general chat later on. I have one last question for you, and that's if we interview you in 5 years, what would be when would you be really happy?
When would I be really happy? I'd be happy if we have like a healthy ecosystem in Lisk. So I don't really care how technologically. I hope Lisk does well, and I hope that we'll have a healthy ecosystem with real world use cases, and people who need to buy the token, not to have it and hold it and whatever. Good, but also because the token is connected to some real world value, like that people need this token to do something else, or it gives them special rights, or it represents a share of something, of some business, some. I hope we can sort of replace the stock market kind of slowly, and I think blockchain is like it's like the stock market for millennials and the younger generation. I don't know how. Like I look at how many corporations there are today, and I think like how can young people compete in that environment? They can't compete with the corporations. There's so many of them, and I think I really see blockchain as a viable alternative. So yeah, and it's really hard to imagine anything else. In fact, it's actually quite scary.
Yeah. Thanks. That's an awesome answer. Good to hear. And thank you again for the time. And for everybody else, see you next week. We will talk about, I think about Lisk Crowd, proof of concept by Musti. And be sure to listen to the Exponential Finance podcast with the interview of Max Kordek if you would like to know more about the journey of Lisk. Thank you, John. Have a good evening.
All right, thanks. Bye.